move on to our last section right now, which is the student success panel. And we have three students, Meredith, Sarah, and Jasmina. They're all former grade 12 students, just like you, and they also all have disabilities. We're so thankful that these university students are donating and their time to help you and inspire you with their experiences. We're going to dedicate this last session to some of the out-of-town students that are joining us, high school students from St. Lawrence and also from T.R. Lecce School. So here to introduce the panel again and lead their discussion is Amanda Blay. These students will show you the way through it, and you're going to do it. So Amanda, over to you and the success panel crew.
Thank you so much, Patty. I hope we've gotten most of our viewers back after that mini disruption, because this is by far the fan favorite for information for this session. So we'll be joined today by three students at Carleton who are PMC students and who have agreed to share their lived experience with you. As always, continue to send in your questions via the Q&A, as I'm sure you have a lot for students who are going through this experience as well. So the first person I'd like to introduce is Meredith. Meredith, if you could please introduce yourself with your name, program, and year of study.
Hi, everyone. My name is Meredith Ogden. I'm a fourth year psychology student. I've done these events a couple of times, so it's great to be back.
And we're so happy to have you back, Meredith. You're always a wealth of knowledge for all of our students. The next person I would like to introduce is Sarah. So Sarah, if you could also do the same with introducing us with your name, program, and year of study.
Hi, I'm Sarah McGrath, and I'm currently a fourth year student in the Bachelor of Social Work program. And just like Meredith, I've done this a couple times before, so I'm so happy to be back.
And we're so excited to have you back as well, Sarah. And our finals panelist is Jasmina. So Jasmina, if you could please introduce yourself with your name and program and year of study as well. I think Jasmina is still trying to log in after that technical issue. So when Jasmina is able to join us, we will definitely introduce her. But we'll get us started by maybe having Meredith. Can you go over what some of the differences with accommodation process are between post-secondary and high school? And what responsibilities in the accommodation process did you have?
Yeah, so there are a couple of differences that kind of stand out for me. The first one, which I think Sonia mentioned, is that you need a formal diagnosis in order to receive accommodation. So you need a formal documentation. And how I remember it to be is that you meet your disabilities coordinator, hopefully well before the academic year. And you'll kind of sort out your accommodations through with your disabilities coordinator. Sorry, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties in the back end, so you gotta bear with us here. But yeah, sorry, as I was saying, you do need formal documentation to bring with your disabilities coordinator, and together you and your disabilities coordinator will kind of walk through that together and decide appropriate accommodations. Another thing that I think is really important to mention, which I think Amanda touched on earlier, was kind of the self-directed learning piece and the advocacy piece, which is really, really big in post-secondary. So you are in control of how you want to manage your learning and your accommodations, and it's really important to think metacognitively. We talk a lot about that at the PMC, which is essentially learning how you learn and understanding how you learn, and then advocating for those needs. So yeah, I think the biggest piece is just kind of being mindful of that process, and yeah, just thinking critically about what works and what doesn't work for you and your learning.
Thank you so much, Meredith. And just like a pro, just rolling with it, which we really appreciate. So I was going to say, I think one of my favorite things about this panel is thinking about how Meredith, Sarah, and Jasmina were once all of you in attendance, in that they had no idea what to expect when they come to post-secondary. So it's really cool to hear Meredith talking about what that experience looked like and her responsibility in it. I'm going to ask Sarah the next question, which is what student services on campus have you used and found to be helpful?
That is a great question. Throughout my whole experience, I've had the chance to use like a lot of services at Carleton. The first one that comes to mind is in my first year, I did the first year connections program, which paired me with an upper year student. And they just helped me transition into post-secondary school. And they also showed me all the supports and services that I have on campus. Within the PMC, what's been vital to my education is my learning strategies appointments, as Amanda kind of spoke about before. They can help you with several academic skills, and they can help you build on the ones that you need extra support in. One of the prominent aspects that my learning strategist taught me was time management. And as Amanda talked about, time management is really key for a lot of things in your academic life. But most of the strategies really help me stay on top of my deadlines, but also let me have time to myself and for self-care. And then another skill that I learned was also like getting ready for tests and exams by creating practice questions and starting early. I think it's really important to start early with your studying. So basically when I do a test, I usually study for 1 to 2 hours a day instead of trying to cram it in a couple days before. Many of the services offered on campus at Carleton are offered at other post-secondary institutions. But I really think that they helped me in all aspects of my university experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It sounds like there's a bunch of different resources that you used, Sarah. I know some people might be curious, how did you create questions to practice? What kind of, can you give us a quick insight into what that might look like?
So it really depended on the class, but let's say for psychology, I would do like who, what, where, when, and how, and kind of like the theories that were based in that. Because I know for a lot of psychology classes, they kind of had scenario-based questions. So I kind of tried to imagine my own scenario and kind of went off like the quizzes that I was provided beforehand, and just understanding that probably the first quiz, you're kind of getting the lay of the land, and then you can go off of that to create your other questions. Yeah.
Very cool. Sorry, I just figured, I was like, that's a fun one to explore a little bit further. Yes, so very important to find your resources, it sounds like, and then kind of make sure you're, like we talked about before, plotting enough time to kind of practice and use them. Meredith, can you talk to us a little bit about PMC? You've mentioned it a little bit. Sarah just talked about some of hers, but can you talk about PMC accommodations and supports that were important in addressing your disability-related needs during your first few terms at Carleton, and have they stayed the same?
Yeah, so for me and my disability, so I was diagnosed with dyscalculia in grade 11, so that was like 2018. And so for me, something that was really helpful was having access to a calculator for all of my statistics classes, because yes, you do have stats classes, even if you are a Bachelor of Arts in Psych. So just FYI to anyone going into that. So that was something that was really helpful, as well as note takers and extra time. Because my working memory is really slow, and so it takes me a long time to write and to kind of process information. So I found that to be really helpful. And in terms of have they stayed the same, I have found that through the online schooling system, I didn't really require a lot of note taking because I had access to the pause and play option. But now transitioning back into in-person learning, I do require notes, and I do find that to be more helpful, so I can focus on what the professor is saying in class instead of trying to multitask. And in terms of the extra time, as you get older in your upper years, there's less exams required and more papers and assignments, at least for a BA in Psych. So it has stayed the same. Like if I did have an exam, then I would require extra time. But for the majority of it, it's just writing assignments and papers. So yeah, that's kind of my journey with that.
Excellent, thank you. So it kind of seems like, like Sonia was kind of hinting to, depending on the year, the course, the requirements in the course, accommodations might not change, but maybe the services or setup that you have might adapt based on like your knowledge in the course material, the resources provided to you, all those things. So lots of things to consider. You brought up the difference between online and virtual, or online and in-person courses, which I'm sure a lot of people are probably thinking, like if there's any tips or things to consider, with the difference between online versus in-person courses. Does either of you want to try to explore that answer?
Sure. I mean, I can kind of jump into that if that's helpful. So for me personally, so I am in my 4th year, and actually it's funny, the majority of my courses are, so actually I should say that I am taking a reduced course load, which is super helpful. That's one of the main features of success that I found in post-secondary. So instead of doing the traditional 5 courses per term, I'm doing 4 courses. And one of the things that I found to be really helpful in that transition to in-person learning was, one, I think visiting the classes that are in person beforehand. This is just a great stress management technique. And also, I think it's really important to obviously be gentle with yourself. Like, this is really hard. I'm finding that for myself. And introduce yourself to your professors and TAs in person. That's a really helpful strategy, just so that the teaching team can get to know you a little bit and help you out and support you in the ways that work for you. But planning is always my number one tip for success, and especially important in this transition. So I think those are the things that I would say that's helped me the most.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I know, Sarah, you haven't had to come back to in-person classes yet, although I think you had some last summer. But like, what are the things, did you prepare any differently than Meredith for returning back to in-person?
So I had taken some in-person classes last winter, and I will say that the number one thing that I was not used to was the commute time and how much time it would take away from doing assignments or readings, or any virtual lectures that I had. So that was a big piece, and just like being mindful that it takes extra energy to go to classes instead of just rolling out of bed and turning on your computer. So that was a big thing that I had to get used to. And then also, like Meredith said, I think it's really beneficial to go talk to your TAs and your professors, but then also like trying to reach out to classmates and try to create a connection somehow, because it could end up in a study group or creating friendships out of it. So I think that's like the couple things that I learned about being in person.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to try and open this up to the floor. But and by the floor, I mean all of our audience members, to send in their questions to the panelists. But Meredith, you had said that you do something called taking a reduced course load, which is definitely something we often talk to students about considering, especially if they feel like deadlines will be really difficult, or the unpredictable nature of their disability is such that like they just might need a little bit more time to access resources, process information, rest? I know it's an interesting one. One of the questions we often get asked is like, how does this impact things like a scholarship, or how long it takes for you to complete things, or access to co-op? Were any of those things something that you experienced or have information to pass along to students?
Yeah, so in terms of kind of how the reduced course load work, this is at least for me and my program. So like I said, I'm in psych. So something that I found to be really helpful was the psychology department actually has kind of a template of the required courses you need to take to graduate in order for your degree. So something that was really helpful was to actually go through that checklist and kind of plan, kind of reverse engineer things and plan things specifically according to like the years required. So I actually didn't know I was going to have a reduced course load coming in from high school into post-secondary. I will have to take 5 years instead of the traditional 4 years. And that includes with summer courses as well. So, I mean, I think it just depends on your learning style in terms of like a scholarship. So I was privileged enough to get an entrance scholarship, and how that worked was at one point I took 3 courses. I think it was in the my second year in the winter, and you need to have, I think it was at least 4 courses, and I was taking 3. And so I emailed my disabilities coordinator and the kind of the awards department at Carleton and just kind of explained my situation. And the great thing about Carleton, I know this is for all post-secondary institutions, but what I love about Carleton is that they're so inclusive and so understanding to these different needs. And so I was able to get my scholarship for that semester, even with 3 courses. So I think the message in that is just reach out and advocate, because people don't always know where you're at. You have to communicate that. So yeah, that's kind of my experience with the scholarship part, at least, but I highly recommend taking a reduced course load if that's something that feels right for you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I will say there's a lot of moving pieces today. There's a lot of information coming at you. Hopefully what you're hearing through Meredith and Sarah is that it's really important to maybe just find some people like your disabilities coordinator that you can connect with, and then we'll walk you through all of the steps. So yes, you have to do things yourself and kind of initiate things, but once they've been initiated, we can help walk you through those different areas. So you're not alone through this. I will say Jasmina, who is our third panelist, has been furiously typing in her responses to different things as well, as she is having difficulty joining. So I'm just going to read one of her responses with regards to the biggest difference between online and in person was that the self-accountability piece in terms of lectures and work, because online stuff was easy and going at your own pace. But it could also be it was also easy in some cases to fall behind on watching lectures, whereas physically needing to go to a space and be present for the lecture made it probably a little bit easier to attend to the information and hold yourself accountable. So again, depending on the person and how motivated and self-directed you could be, that would be something to keep in mind whenever you're selecting courses or looking at the format in which they're being delivered, because a lot of institutions are offering in-person and online or hybrid courses. So you really got to think about yourself and what space you feel would be the best for you to learn in. So as we begin to start wrapping up, I'm just going to see if there's any audience questions that are coming in that we want to address at all. No questions yet. Okay. So was there anything else that any of our mentors wanted or our panelists wanted to chat about before we get to our closing question? maybe something related to connecting with your peers or socializing, because that's usually a big question too, in terms of social interaction with folks, which is very different in person than online.
I can speak to that.
Perfect.
So for interacting in person versus online, it is a very different kind of world. I will say when I had started at Carleton in 2020, I was basically starting school at home in my little hometown. I didn't really know anybody from Carleton, but I ended up reaching out to my student society, and many departments have their own student society. And that's how I kind of started reaching out to people and making friendships and fostering kind of a sense of community at Carleton, even though I was not living in Ottawa at that time. And then since going back in person, I just have really pushed myself out of my comfort zone, and I really make the effort to talk to my classmates and my teachers, because I believe that fostering connection, like even if it's for professional or personal based things, I just think it's really important, especially in the university or post-secondary experience.
And you're joining us today, so obviously you figured out ways to make it important to connect with a greater population of people too. So that connection piece is really, really important. Jasmina also added in here, always check if your classes have a Discord group, because it's a great way to socialize and create study groups as well. Some classes, websites might even have study groups or discussion boards built into the class itself. So always make sure to check those. So unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our panel. And as our wrap up, we always like to ask everyone, if you knew then what you know now, what's the most important advice you would like to pass along to a new student? So Sarah, we'll let you go first.
Sounds good. Just thinking back to when I first started at Carleton, I think that the number one piece of advice I would give myself is to not strive to be perfect, and don't strive to be anything more than you. Just knowing what your pace is and how far you can push yourself is really important, especially like going from online to in person. Understanding your energy levels and like making self-care a priority is really important, especially when your world is really surrounded by assignments, lectures, and basically self-directed learning the whole time. So you really need to give yourself that time to have breaks and to give yourself some self-care in order to make sure that you're doing the best you can in your schooling and anything else, really.
Thank you very much. Yes, I often find my students' hardest critics are themselves. So definitely holding yourself to realistic standards is really important. Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm going to read Jasmina's input here. So she said, I wish someone had told me it was okay to take my time and do things at my own pace. You don't need to have everything figured out, especially at your age, even if that's what your parents or teachers are telling you. You have a long, wonderful life ahead of you, and there's no need to rush it. You'll end up where you're meant to be at the right time, no matter what. So take your time to learn about yourself, what you're passionate about, and what you like and don't like. And most importantly, make mistakes. I've made plenty, and each one has been what led me to where I am right now in my life, and I truly wouldn't have it any other way. I'll also say that Jasmina is one of our mentors, so you can always be paired with an upper year student like Jasmina who can help guide you with that transition to university or college. And a lot of institutions have mentorship programs, so mentors can be a really helpful aspect to transition as well. So Meredith, you can round us off on your, if you knew then what you know now answer, and then we'll hand it back to Patty.
Sure. Okay. So I always kind of have to really reflect on how I want to approach this question, but I think I'm going to leave it pretty simply today and maybe just say that one, there are so many supports out there that are available. All you have to do is reach out and ask. And I think the second part to that is that you can change your path at any point in your degree. I've had a lot of classmates and friends change their program or come into the psychology program. And so you are in full control of that. You have full agency over your life, your degree, whatever that is. And so it's okay to not have this kind of rigid path forward. I think that's probably more of a lesson to myself, but I wanted to share it out there. So yeah, you get to define what success means to you, and there's a bunch of supports and people cheering you on. So yeah, that's my little nugget of wisdom.
As always, those nuggets are super valuable. So thank you very much. It's been a true privilege to be moderating this panel with all you folks. And to those of you watching, I hope you've held on to something that you found would be useful. And I expect some of you to be on our panel in the future as well. So thank you very much, and I'll hand it back over to Patty.
Wonderful, Amanda. Thank you very much, and an excellent job leading that group. Thank you very much to the panelists. And Meredith, you mentioned that that's just nuggets. No, au contraire, that's a gold mine, my friend. That's a gold mine. Thank you very much, Meredith, Sarah, and Jasmina, for giving your time and having such a positive message for the students. Thank you also to all of you students, teachers and parents who have joined us. It's wonderful to have you here with us. Wonderful to know that you're setting things up and getting prepared for your transition next year. And thank you also to the excellent professional crew here at Paul Menton Centre, the folks behind the scenes and our presenters. Just a fabulous job.